How's that? There you go, we're ready to go. Okay, Ace, yep.
Yes, Chair, you're live.
Okay, good morning everyone and welcome to our meeting today, reference to the agenda items that we have on board. I have three officers with me this morning, Ian Batewell, Hugh Owen and Amy Longford. And can you just introduce yourselves, officers, just to explain to people, members, public are watching, and what your position is in council, and they're quite aware. I think many of us know, but be valuable for that. And members, just introduce yourselves once I've finished with officers. Thank you.
Do you want me to start?
Yeah, no problem.
I'm Ian Bakewell and I'm the Council's Housing and Communities Manager, and essentially I'm responsible for the Council's housing function.
Amy?
Good morning. Yes, I'm Amy Longford. I'm the Heritage and DM Area Manager. So I work in the planning department and deal with historic buildings.
Cheers, thank you. You?
Good morning all. Hugh Owen, Principal Environmental Health Officer.
Thank you, you, and welcome. Good morning to all three of you. I don't think we'll be long today. I'll let you take the agenda forward, Ian, once we've gone through members. I'm Simon Howarth, Chair of Adult Select Committee, and I represent Gilwyn, Llanelli and Clydach area. Next member, please.
Good morning. I'm Councillor Louise Brown, Vice Chair of the committee, and represent Shire Newton Ward. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm County Councillor Ruth Edwards, and I am the elected member for Untitled Chapter and also a member of this select committee.
Good morning, Malcolm Lane, County Councillor for the Mardy and a member of this committee.
Good morning, I'm Councillor Maureen Powell, a member of this committee, and I'm the County Councillor for Castle Ward in Abergavenny.
Good morning, I'm Martin Grokert. I'm a member of this committee and my ward is Lansdowne in Abergavenny.
Okay, do we have anybody else? Hazel?
Just Tony, Chair.
Tony? What's up to Tony? He's got a little error on him. What have I got for you, Tony, here now? Tony, you're on mute.
Thank you. Yes.
There you go.
I'm Tony Crowhurst. I'm a co-opted member of this committee and I represent the Disability Advice Project. Thank you.
Good morning, Tony. Right, members, we'll start with, and I do have Hazel, yep.
You do. You also have Stephen Griffiths, Chair. He's very quiet at the bottom.
Is Stephen there, is it? Let's have a look then. Oh, right. Stephen Griffiths. There you go, Stephen. I'll write your name down, then I can remember you. Stephen, just introduce yourself quickly.
Yeah, good morning all. My name's Steve Griffiths, Strategy and Policy Officer Housing.
Morning, Steve.
Morning all. Morning. Chair.
Right, and Hazel, Scrutiny Officer, who leads our meetings for us. Yeah, Hazel.
Yes, myself, Chair Scrutiny Manager, and we have Robert McGowan also with us, who is behind the scenes doing the camera work. And I've just noticed Councillor Val Smith has joined us to observe.
Oh, right. Morning, Rob.
Morning all, thank you very much.
Morning, Chair. Morning, everyone.
Hiya, Val. Right, we'll start off. Apologies for absence, Hazel.
Councillor Woodhouse, Chair, and Councillor Harris.
Okay, thank you. And can we have declarations of interest as and when? Anybody got any interest? Please shout out and make sure that we fill in a form, and Hazel will sort that form out for you if you do declare that interest. I don't have anybody, any member, any public open forum items coming forward, Hazel? No members of the public on board today with questions or anything?
No, Chair.
All right, thank you. Right, let's get into the report then. Just quite quickly, empty homes strategy, just scrutinise the strategies for addressing empty homes. Our chief officer with us today is Ian Bakewell, and I've got Amy Longford and Hugh Owen and Stephen Griffiths. Ian, do you want to take us through the document quite quickly? I think most of us, well, all of us have had a good look at it, and it's not a lengthy report. So if you want to get through that with us, and then we'll just go through the other three officers just in case they want any input, and then members, you got a few questions for you. All right, thank you, Ian.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I mean, in short, Welsh Government have requested local authorities to establish an empty homes action plan. Not empty homes, an empty property action plan, and essentially this is part of their agenda in terms of addressing empty homes and empty properties, and also their town centre regeneration priorities. And we've taken this as a bit of an opportunity to probably review the approach that we've been taking, really, in particular around empty homes, which I'd say was probably scope for more coordination and probably more of a light touch, friendly, supportive sort of role, because really the emphasis is as taking more of a proactive role, a more internally coordinated role, and the scope of that being wider across the authority, and as a result, we've ended up with this action plan. It's essentially been put together really through ourselves as housing, with environmental health, planning, and building control. And in terms of putting it together, it includes existing activity, so we've, if you like, formalised that, but also look to bring in new activity, and essentially that is around the enforcement side of things, which if we did need to go that far, that would probably take us into new territory, albeit we have done some bits and bobs in the past that certainly Amy has been involved with. So in terms of putting it together, we've been probably quite specific in, rather than just saying we'll do all or blanket. We've tried to be specific about some specific individual properties, which fortunately for Monmouthshire, we don't have this sort of difficulties and challenge perhaps to the same extent as some other areas, but we do most definitely have a small number of quite bad properties in terms of condition. The numbers of properties that we do have across Monmouthshire that are empty, we know are in good condition. So, but the ones that we've included in this ones are ones that we consider ones that we can, if you like, latch onto, and within our capacity, we consider that we can deal with those. So I don't think really there's a lot much else to say on this at the moment. So we want Cabinet to approve the report, and with obviously with Amy, Hugh and Steve, obviously if there's any wider questions, probably more the technical side of things, We'll obviously try and answer anything if you've got any subsequent queries.
Okay, that's great. Right, Amy, have you anything to add to Ian's comments on the report there, just quite quickly?
No, I think Ian summed that up really well. I think the approach taken between planning, environmental health, building control and the housing team looked at trying to focus the limited resources we have in the right areas with our bit of a combined approach, and looking at uses our formal legislation where necessary to kind of affect the maximum amount of change, really. So yeah, I don't think I need to add any more than Ian's explained there, but happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, no problem. Are you anything there?
Thank you, Chair. Just to re-emphasise what Ian and Amy has said, it's the action plan in particular provides a focus for strengthened collaboration between environmental health, housing and planning. Obviously something we've always done, but gives that added focus from our perspective in dealing with some of the more severe impactive empty properties that we've got in the county.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Steve?
No, Chair, nothing extra to add.
All right, thank you. Right, members, questions? Right, I've got Martin showing his hand up. Can we just make sure that we put our hands up, guys, then I don't miss anybody off there, because I've just got to zip up and down the bar there. Let me just make sure we got the has everybody got the hand function on their computer at the moment? I can't see it. No, so we haven't got that at the moment. Right, I've got Martin anyway. You continue, Martin. You put your hand up first, and I've got Ruth. Okay, and we get the hand.
Okay, thanks, Chair. We've got a continuing huge problem with housing, haven't we? Only this week, a young couple with young twins who live in my ward have had to go to a private rented place, and it's taken most of their weekly income just to get a roof over their head. And you know, I feel very sorry for Ian and all his team, but I think this new scheme does help us to move forward. And it was interesting to see one of the buildings that Ian has highlighted is actually in my ward. And that's the former nunnery on Old Hereford Road, that for many years, after being a residential nunnery, was used as a residential outdoor education centre, and then finally as a youth hostel. So it has a history of being used as a residential establishment. And now, after being empty for several years, I think it says a lot about the character of Monmouthshire that there is barely a broken pane of glass in the building. I've lived in some places where that building would have been taken apart by now. And it's such a shame, particularly as one part of it is actually a listed Grade 2 Georgian mansion. The original part of that, and I guess that's something for Amy to look at, and that's where the original chapel was when it was a nunnery. But the majority of the building is made of good old concrete, looks fairly hideous, but has been providing accommodation for young people and for those in a monastic order for many years. And I would commend this scheme. It's a great building. It keeps coming up for auction, and God knows what happens. There's another sign up on it now saying it's up for auction, and that's about the third time in the last 18 months. Now, if we could get hold of that building and get people into it, it would be a lot better than flogging it off now to some private entrepreneur. Let's go for it. I think this is a great scheme. Thanks.
Okay, cheers, Martin. Thanks for that, and I'm sure Ian's taken that on board and the team there. And so I think most people know where that building is. A great location as well. Ruth?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Sorry, I've got one of these awful colds like Simon. But yes, I think we have to move with the times, and I've been pushing, as Ian will know, for years about empty properties on the streets and utilising some of them, although the developers, I don't think they like it. They like to have green fields to build houses on. But it does revitalise the street. It makes it look as though it's a place to visit rather than empty properties about, especially shops and so on. And of course, our shopping habits have changed a great deal with COVID. We're a lot more online. And I know there's been a question when we spoke earlier about parking and so on, but a lot of people nowadays, if they live in towns and they've got good bus service or train service, they don't necessarily need to have cars. And of course, youngsters want to live independent of parents at a younger age nowadays. So they all have to be housed. And that we're not getting any less people on this planet. There seem to be more and more. But also, as far as housing goes, I don't know, as Tony was saying about that building specifically in Abergavenny and some of it being listed, that's going to be far more costly to renovate, as Amy will tell you, rather than just a big building that can sort of be divided up to housing. We don't seem to have any extra help with empty housing in the countryside for, you know, people who've lived in the area. If it's a dilapidated house or whatever, a city person will buy it, and it's way out of reach then of the local people. And I'm just wondering if I've got one that is listed on the at risk, I know, just along the road from here. Does Amy know how many we've got properties that are on the at risk register that could be perhaps brought in? I know it's a bit off the hoof to ask you this morning, Amy, but I expect you've got a rough idea of how many properties that we could utilise rather than building from scratch on good land. Anyway, thank you. I hope Amy could answer that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ruth. Amy, do you have anything for Ruth there?
I'll give it a try. I don't know the exact figures off the top of my head, but I can get them. But we do have a number. I'd probably say around about the 20 of kind of listed buildings at risk that are kind of more rural properties. And as part of our service improvement plan, we have decided that we're going to set up a buildings at risk strategy and an action plan, and we'll obviously take that to the relevant committee for scrutiny, where we will identify some real actions. We are going to do X within a time period. So and that's essentially looking at formal notices. And I think that's kind of going to have to be the way that we're moving forward to tackle some of these buildings. We need to be firm and take action where we can, but also engage with the owners and encourage them as best as possible. And I think this strategy that Ian's put forward today links with housing. We've got opportunities to explore additional grants, to kind of gives a carrot and a stick element to tackling the problem, because I think it needs to be addressed like that. Just turn into the building that we were discussing in Abergavenny, it is listed. That building actually has an historic core and a more modern element to it. It had listed building and planning permission for conversion to flats, and the new build housing was built in the back area, and it could make a fantastic opportunity for a large number of flats, so we can change the layout, those types of things. So I wouldn't want to think that just because it's listed, it's restrictive. We want to try and facilitate the use of these historic buildings, and if we can do that, that improves and gives opportunity for housing that wouldn't be brought forward in other ways, then I think we need to grab that and run with it as best as we can. And I think some of these problems are perceived to be insurmountable, but in reality they're not. But I would just draw members' attention to the phosphates issues that we do have in the north of the county when we're trying to deliver housing in particular. That is quite a bit of a problem, but I know that colleagues are really trying to push forward and find solutions to tackle that particular issue.
I think also, Amy, sorry, Chair again, Amy is well aware that we visited Cowend House last week as some of the planning committee, and that was compulsory purchase. But that has taken absolutely years to sort of facilitate the compulsory purchase and also to bring it back to life. It is a big, major project, so it'll be quite a while before it's come to, you know, to be habitable then. But, you know, it's not insurmountable. It's just that it takes such a long time. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, and that's great to hear, Amy, about the place in Abergavenny there. So hopefully, you know, I mean, that could be one of the places that we as a council could probably set a benchmark on. But yeah, everything has its problems. You know, I mean, like you're on about the issue which has arisen now, and sewerage and all these things, and it's just infrastructures. It's not easy, but so I'm sure we'll get there. Right, I do have Louise Brown, and we haven't had the function up yet. Hazel referenced our hands, but Louise has indicated she'd like to speak. So Louise.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was looking at the report and it mentioned about a 15-year rolling loan to facilitate from Welsh Government in relation to empty properties in the town centre. And I was just wondering whether or not that included for sale properties. You know, for example, on Rightmove at the moment, there's a property opposite Marks and Spencer's near the bus station that's a three-story, 3-bedroom property that looks as if it hasn't been lived in for some time. Also near the town centre, there's obviously going to be Sevenview Care Home that when the Crick Road development is actually up and running, the people who live there will then be transferred to that area. And also in Monmouth there is the market hall that was used as a night shelter. So I mean, they're not all empty properties, but I wondered how it was defined in terms of, are they just properties that are left empty for probate reasons, or are they empty properties that are for sale as well that can be used? I mean, obviously there's a difference between the two, and it may be that there's sort of different areas of funding that you could actually have a look at. And I wondered, the programme, the action plan mentions 8 properties, but presumably you wouldn't necessarily be limited by that. I mean, there isn't, I suppose you can apply for whatever you manage to find. So just those are a few questions on how the scheme would actually work. Thank you, Chair.
Ian, anybody like to answer that, Ian? Ian, we're just on mute there, mate.
Okay.
There you go.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Yeah, the funding part. I've got to be honest. I haven't. None of us have really gone into the detail as yet. But we do regard this as an opportunity, albeit it's a loan rather than a grant. Excuse me. Because one of the challenges that we have got as an authority is there is no dedicated funding stream for these levels of enforcement or even just general work. So beyond a few relatively small revenue budgets. But to answer Councillor Brown's question specifically about properties for sale, I'm pretty confident that this loan facility wouldn't support buying properties per se, but it may support, and I believe it does support, compulsory purchase and probably enforced sale as well. So if we did get into those realms, that's certainly something that we would want to explore. But I think in terms of the approach that we're taking, there will be there's a number of other potential opportunities. I mean, for a start, we've got social housing grant that we make available to housing associations for the development of affordable housing. If there was scope to link a housing association with an empty property, that might present an opportunity. Also, the council can access social housing grant now, so that's something new this year, and we're certainly factoring that into our considerations. There are other funding streams through town centre regeneration. Again, I don't think that would go towards actually buying a property, but nevertheless, there may be opportunities that other funding that we can lever in. So, and in terms of actually buying properties, as an authority, we are looking at whether MCC buying accommodation, as opposed to necessarily relying on our housing association partners all the time, is now indeed a new opportunity for us. So we're certainly factoring that into considerations. We did look at a scenario of we picked like a 1, 2 and 3 bedroom properties. We looked at some existing stock that was for sale in the county, but housing benefit regulations don't allow us to actually buy a property and then place a homeless applicant in it and then us manage it. So the quirk of the housing benefit regulations means that if we do buy anything, we've got to bring in a managing agent or a partner to support us with that. So that's something that we're modelling at the moment, and we found some accommodation in the south that we found some flats that we are looking at to see whether that indeed does present us with a viable option.
Okay, thanks for that, Ian.
Yeah, could I come back?
Louise, do you want to come back in, or
yes, please. Yeah. Thanks for that answer. I think basically what you're saying is that there might be opportunities through other funding as opposed to this this loan. It seems to me as if the empty properties is more ones that have been sort of left for a while and nobody's doing anything about. But then that also presents problems. For example, on probate, if there's a dispute over the inheritance and that sort of thing, isn't it? Or I mean, what sort of reasons do you generally find that properties are being left empty? Thank you.
That is I mean, Steve might want to come in here because it's Steve that has the more day-to-day engagement with property owners, but that is a big one in terms of empty homes, where properties are in probate. So, Steve, do you want to?
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, that is one reason why empty properties become available. Usually, though, then they become then probate is over, and then they're inherited properties. Then, so there's a lot of properties on the list that are inherited, but not necessarily. How can I say? Remain empty because of any other issues. They just sit in them for various reasons. Mainly because they don't want to let them go, or they're an asset that they want to keep because of house prices.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Ian, have any more members? I've got no more hands raised there in the chat bar there. I've got a few questions myself, but any of the members got any more questions? No, I don't see anybody coming up. Right, I'm just going to start with the report there first of all, Ian. This report is directed at the strategy led by Welsh Government on the loan side of it, and it's quite clear. It does say this is more directed at town centres it does say that, you know, it's more directed at town centres, and all to do with regeneration of town centres as well. You know, what we can do with town centres when and we all know that the next probably 15 years, 20 years, I said as a new councillor when we were discussing something, maybe in regeneration of Abergavenny, I can't remember when it was, but the internet and how people go about their business in this world has changed in the last 20 years, and it's going to change even further. Our town centres are going to struggle, and they will struggle, you know, and it's obvious it's not going to be easy. So there is a marketplace there for owners of properties, as we know. A lot of our town centres are actually privately owned, aren't they? I mean, they're owned by trusts, they're owned by all sorts of configurations of people out there, and I'm only speaking on Abergavenny there. So we have five towns in Monmouthshire, so Chepstow, Caldicot, Monmouth and Abergavenny, and I'll say Usk in there. The member asked a question: Is Usk classed as a town within the remit of Monmouthshire? So that's number one question. Number two question then, because it's all built around virtually town generation and trying to convert probably some properties into some commercial properties into livable properties, flats, whatever. We then come to Amy then on let's say Abergavenny, because Abergavenny is a conservation area, which conservation laws, etc. And I'm only using my area of Crickhowell, which I know is really difficult to do anything in Crickhowell if it's commercial, really difficult because of the conservation side of it. So there's the law side of that then. Who would change the law on converting something from commercial to domestic? The other question I have is, you mentioned in the report about training, officers training and the cabinet members training. Before you go forward with this, the cabinet members need to be trained on the principles of what this document is about. Who will be our cabinet members who we would have to train? Have we trained them? Have they had the training? Have they done all that? My fourth question then would be, if we don't go down the lines of the town centre regeneration, wherever the terminology, does that mean we can't apply for the loans for this? Because that's what it's about, because they will be very strict with the criteria. I think it was made clear with one of the statements there, unless we do that, we can't. I think you mentioned it over, something to do with if we build a home and it's done whatever. So there'll be strict criteria with this 15-year loan. Secondly, number 5, I think you mentioned there is a working group out there. Who's on the working group on the empty homes side of it? And it may be that members feel that perhaps we should have a member on there now, or 2 members, whatever, sitting on that group. So we are converse of what's going on out there. And I think my last question was aimed at something on the lines of if we do find properties which we feel come into some bracket of meeting the criteria, what is the stages then of taking that forward? Is you've got to apply for the loan, but let's say we've got to match fund it. So let's just say we're looking at something and we have to find with another £200,000. Is there different criteria then we've got to find that extra cash from? And does it come from capital, or we'll be able to apply? Because you know we can't borrow money to do this and then go and borrow another bit to top that up. Is it 100% loan for that? Let's say that portfolio of what we want to do, or will there be any match funding in there? Have we actually scrutinised? Loans always come with caveats, and I just want to make sure that the caveats are in there. We've ticked the boxes, so there's a bit to go on there. It's straightforward, really, but there's just something which I've picked up, and then I've got Ruth want to come back in, and maybe some of the members then want to step back in after that. So if you could just go through them for me quickly, please, that'd be great. Either one of you, just.
Could I just bring up if it's just a chair about clarity of the 5th town that you said was Usk. As Tony alluded to, Raglan and Usk put together, I think predominantly years ago, because of the rurality of it all, and Raglan, well, they're all built up so much more now, but Usk was a market town. There was a livestock market there, and perhaps that was the criteria where people thought of it being a main town. Thank you, Chair.
I thought it lost its status of a village because it lost its cricket team because it was a town. Am I right to say that? It lost the Ashes. All right, okay. Fire away, guys.
Yeah, I can answer, I think, most of those. Well, to answer your question about Usk, we've definitely in terms of us, we've certainly factored Usk into our approach, and by way of example, Steve has been in touch with property owner in the high street about a property which probably if you drive by it, you probably wouldn't necessarily notice, but there's it's a property that is beginning to look in quite poor condition, and so he's given Steve a few undertakings. In terms of whether Usk, I don't think Usk would probably fall within the criteria of the loan, but having said that, we would need to check. If it could do, we wouldn't exclude it. And again, obviously similar with Raglan, I suspect Raglan probably wouldn't. But you know, if there was an opportunity, we'd certainly follow that up. In terms of commercial to residential, with me, from a simplistic perspective, I'm really keen that we use commercial or we consider commercial to residential opportunities. I think in the world that we sit in at the moment, where we've got such a pressure on housing stock, we shouldn't exclude any opportunities. Having said all that, obviously there is planning criteria to meet. I'm advised that we would have to come up with a very good business case for converting the designation, but we're certainly not. I'm certainly not. Don't want to dismiss that, and I think planning are expecting to be considering potential opportunities as we go forward. And as I sit here, we are. I think there's a viewing of some premises again. I think in the Mega area of some commercial premises that may present a homeless opportunity. And I think also on that agenda, again, I think it's important the committee also are aware that the housing associations are having conversations about it as well. It does throw up, let's say, complications, because if a housing association took on commercial premises alone, they've got no experience of or less experience of dealing with commercial properties than you end up with mixed use. So it does throw up a few more risk factors, but I think we can be assured that the housing associations are looking at it and not dismissing it lightly. With regards to training, the training has been done. So we had an officer session during the summer, and the cabinet session. Half of the cabinet were able to attend, and I think the training was more. I don't think it was training per se. It was more about raising awareness that there are a surprising number of pieces of legislation that enables us to take action. It certainly opened my eyes to a number of opportunities, and it's legislation that probably individually between us we're not all familiar with them. I mean, one of the one of the legislation was like building legislation that building control would be more familiar with, but it certainly opened the door to ideas for us. And the advantage with this is that Welsh Government have appointed a specialist, a chap called Andrew Lavender, who's done a lot of empty homes work in Kent, and he is available to us. He's at the end of the phone to answer any queries and basically handhold us really and walk us through scenarios. So we've got somebody there that will support us and guide us, and we most definitely will look to use Andrew if we can. The working group you talked about. Yes, we've had a working group in place now, probably for probably just over, well, probably about 2 years. But I think the action plan actually is helpful for the working group. I think it gives us something specific to focus on and latch on to. And we've also got we're all members of the officers. We're all members of the group, but legal are also members of that group as well. Can't think of anybody else that I've missed. But obviously legal we consider important members to be part of that group, because it would be them that would be supporting us with any potential enforcement action. You asked if we don't follow the criteria, will we be able to use the loan? And the answer will be no. You know, Welsh Government are quite strict about the loan funding is there, but we've got to tick their boxes. And the training was a good example. No training, no access to the loan. And in terms of, oh yeah, sorry, you asked about member involvement on that working group. Quite happy to discuss that with yourself, Simon, if that's something you'd be interested in. I mean, I think from my perspective, I think the more profile this has got publicly, I think that's helpful, because we're in a position where we can say that we're taking it seriously. It is important to the authority, and we will take action if owners don't support our request. So I think anything that brings anything to that table will be helpful. So quite happy to have that conversation outside of this group. And then you talked about the stages, if you like, the flow chart of actions. I think Amy touched on it earlier. This is very much about the carrot and stick approach. We see this as starting with friendly, supportive, helpful. We are, as officers, we are here to help. We'll signpost, we'll facilitate, we'll do anything that we can to support an owner. But if owners don't engage or don't respond, what we're saying is now it's appropriate as an authority we take, we up the ante, and we take a process through through more of a formal steps. Obviously that's something that we don't want to do. We want to engage positively and help people, and we will do that. That's our starting approach, but it's making that commitment to those those escalated steps if we need to. And I would say those escalated steps will include, as I said to Councillor Brown, other funding streams. You know, this isn't about one funding stream necessarily. I think it's about bringing as many funding streams into the pot if we can and if it's appropriate. You know, so it's doing, for me, it's doing whatever we can do with what's available to us. So I hope that answers the questions. I don't know whether Amy particularly has got anything to add around the commercial to residential side.
Yeah, I've got Amy in here now. So. Amy, do you want to just back in?
Yeah, if that's okay, that's great. I'll just quickly comment on the planning side of things. I think your question there in relation to the commercial and to residential use and our changing uses of our town centres is a really pertinent point. It's a very, very good question. So previously in the current local development plan, we have defined town centres, which is about trying to protect commercial properties on the ground floor. So we've always been quite supportive of residential conversion on the upper floors to try and maintain vitality, you know, interest, activity going on in a town centre. But as you say, people are using town centres extremely differently as they did 2, 3 pre-COVID, 5, 10 years ago. So those policies are potentially completely out of date now. So in the revised local development plan, we will be looking at reconsidering those boundaries around town centres and possibly writing policies that are more supportive of mixed uses in the town centres, trying to look at different activities that bring people in, lots of commercial and residential combined mixed use schemes. For example, the one in Monmouth, we would hope to get a mixed use scheme on that one, definitely. So that's definitely something that we're looking at and that we want to pursue. But we will, at the moment, even though we are determining applications under the current LDP and those current policies, I think we need to look more pragmatically and reasonably about and address the current situation. So it is a case on its own merits, but if there are wider benefits like regeneration benefits, bringing empty properties, derelict properties back into use, I think that's something that we'd be very supportive of. There's a much stronger case for change of use in those circumstances. In terms of the historic environment, conservation areas, listed buildings, there is a perception that because it's listed you can't do anything with it, or because it's a conservation area, and I think there's a hangover from years ago that possibly was the approach. Now we're far more, and policy supports us far more about managing that change. So we want to effectively support changing town centres, bringing historic properties back into use. We are more flexible about the approach that we have, and we do have to think about future-proofing these buildings, not just in getting a use in them, but also making them more environmentally friendly as well, and thinking about the decarbonisation agenda. So there's lots of different things that historic buildings can actually support. You know, we wouldn't want to be demolishing lots of buildings. There's a lot of embodied energy in these buildings, and trying to find a new use for them and maintaining them, it ticks so many boxes. So that's definitely something that we really want to support. So if anybody comes to you and says, oh, it's listed, that means we can't touch it, that's not true. Come and have chats with us. Please really engage with us, because that's actually contrary to what we're thinking. We're really trying to encourage people to use them and look at new technologies about how we can achieve more environmentally sustainable buildings. So there's all those bits and pieces. And yes, just to reiterate what Ian was saying about the support that is provided by Andrew Lavender through Welsh Government, because some of the more formal action that we would take in terms of compulsory purchase or going down the enforced sale route can seem quite scary. As Ruth mentioned before, we compulsory purchased Cowent House in Cowent, and that has taken a number of years to get to the point where they are restoring the building and it will go back up for sale. But I think there's a lot of myths around CPO and enforced sale, and I think the more we do, the more we will learn. But we have to go into this with our eyes open, and we have to try, essentially, and we have to see what we can achieve. And the approach that we've taken, looking at this multidisciplinary approach and trying to get funding wherever we can, makes that course a little bit safer and we're a little bit more educated in what we're doing.
Okay, thanks for that, Amy. That's good news that we do have a different aspect and approach on historic side of it as well. I don't have any more questions now. I've got Louise with her hand up there. It's not in the chat bar, just bear with me. Right, Louise, yes. Can I just, Val's on board. Val, are you still with us? No, she's not there. Do I have any more members want to ask any questions before I bring Louise back in? No. Right, Louise.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I mean, it seems as if the loan is geared towards town centre and empty properties. Are there any loans from Welsh Government or any funding available for empty properties outside of the town centre? Because obviously there are some properties that are, you know, may be able to be put to use, but aren't necessarily in the town centre itself. So I was just wondering about that particular aspect, or is this sort of, in a sense, part of the regeneration of town centres? Thank you.
Yeah, to answer your question, there isn't a specific empty property pot for outside of town centres, and this most definitely is a deliberate and targeted step by Welsh Government to bring town centre properties back into use. My view, as I said earlier, is that where we do identify a property that falls outside of those areas, we need to be looking at other opportunities. And say the obvious one would be social housing grant. Would we make it fit with that? And also whether whether the council will have that appetite to actually buy properties, or even whether housing associations would just buy anyway. I suspect they would be looking for social housing grant, but we are working with them on for example, on a property using recycled social housing grant. So we definitely look at other opportunities, and clearly we can't just sit back and rely on this loan. I suspect what probably may need to happen is, if we did get into serious enforcement steps with a property, well, probably with any property for that matter, it would probably be something that we would need to get further approvals around, and I would probably anticipate that we would probably need cabinet approval on certain aspects. Again, I wasn't involved with, and Amy will probably say, but I suspect they were the sort of steps that happened with the Coen property. So, and again, I think it would be helpful to do that, because it's obviously it's public, and it sends out the authorities' message and perspective about empty properties, and that we don't want them in Monmouthshire.
Yes, thank you. Chair, you're on mute.
Thanks for that, Vice Chair. I think Steve made the valid point there early on about empty properties that we do have in Monmouthshire, and the reasons behind most of them, and a way forward with them. And I think when you look at issues with second homes, let's say, within the country. I won't say any areas, but second homes which people have inherited them or whatever, and historically, and they feel as though that is an asset. And then certain authorities now are charging rates. They're going to double the rates on second homes. These people will pay it. I mean, there's more 99% of people will pay. If you want to treble it, they will pay it. I mean, they I don't know, don't get me wrong, but they seem to think that the homes it's the asset, and if you've got to find that their extra monies to pay it as a second home, and they're rich enough to do it as well, a lot of them. I mean, I think you'll probably find that when we're looking at town centre regenerations and who owns the portfolios in some of them town centres. I mean, they're in trusts with lots of money as well, and I mean. And when it probably, I bet if you look and say to some of these people, when you do have your portfolio to take it forward, some of them say, well, we don't need your money, like, and you'll find that. I mean, that is what happens there, like, so. I think it's not going to be easy job. Could I just ask one question? It does confuse me about the loan. The loan is to the council. The loan is to the individual or the company which has the portfolio. I just want to be clear with that one, because how would all that work? Because so I own 2 properties in Abergavenny and I want to convert it to 2 residential, and I come to you as a council and say, well, you've got this thing out there now which we can have a loan for, a 15-year loan. How does all that, can you just give us a bit of an explanation how all that works? Because it doesn't say in the report, but I think I got 5 minutes. Just how does it all work then? Because maybe people looking on there, and people may ask us as members, like, oh, I hear about this thing. Then how does it all work? Can you just give us a quick brief on how all that works then?
Yeah, I'll bring Steve in here, but one thing I haven't mentioned is that we do have a bank of funding from Welsh Government under our there's a combination of loan and grant, but the actual loan that we're talking about in the report would be a loan to the council.
To the council.
So if we wanted to do any enforcement, that loan funding will cover our whatever expenditure we incur, but we do have another pot that we can make available to property owners. So Steve, do you want to just explain?
Yes, we do. It's called a home improvement loan scheme, and we've partaken in that, participated in that over the last 6, no, probably longer than that, 8 to 9 years. It's a scheme that in the beginning was designed for empty properties solely. It is now expanded out to cover home improvement loans as well for owner occupiers. We've got about, I think, for the life of me now, I can't remember off the top of my head, maybe £1 million that's available to us. That has to be paid back now by 2030 to Welsh Government. In the beginning, we were quite successful. We got quite a few, quite a number out of the door. But since the last 5 or 6 years, it's been difficult to shift. That's apparent, I would say, for a number of authorities, not just Monmouthshire. And the Welsh Government then changed the criteria on how they were going to operate. But there is loans out there for empty property owners to bring back empty properties anywhere within the county, whether it's town centres or out in the countryside. And there will be for developers. There's most of this works on a fixed fee as well. There's an interest-free loans. There are admin charges. For the homeowner, they're fixed, but for the developer, it would depend on what they borrow, how much they can borrow. You can borrow up to £35,000 per unit. So if there's a developer out there spots a property that can be converted into 2 units, then he could up to £70,000 to do that. But at the moment, because of the payback time now, the window is decreasing. Obviously that payback time is decreasing as well. At one time, back when it was introduced, it was almost 15 years. It's now 8 years now, isn't it? To 2030. That's when we have to pay it back to Welsh Government.
Okay, Steve, that's great. Yeah. Anything else you want? Sorry, Steve. Anything else you want to add to that?
No, that's fine.
No. Okay. Anybody out there? If you know anybody out there, get hold of Stephen Griffiths. You're pointing in the right direction. Members, I don't have any chat bar up there at the moment. Reference to people want to speak, so I think we'll just go to the recommendations there in the report. Just bear with me. As Ian's just pointed out, this is all about enforcement with the loan. So it's not about having a loan to convert or anything. This is all about enforcement and pushing forward, especially in our towns. It's trying to get people to do something with empty properties. Right, recommendation 2.1 is to consider both the risks of empty properties and the opportunities associated with tackling empty properties, particularly in relation to town centre regeneration. To recommend 2.2, to recommend the report was forward to consideration by Adult Select Committee with a view of gaining Cabinet approval to adopt the proposed empty property action plan, see Appendix 1. So hopefully from today we'll take this to Cabinet then. When we're looking at Cabinet as quickly as possible, Ian? Yeah, okay, all right. Right, members, do we have an agreement that we're happy with that? And we said we'd have the conversation about probably this working group, putting a member on there. We'll have the conversation outside, is it? And perhaps we can look at that, taking that forward then. So I won't include that as a caveat from here because it's totally different aspect to the report, isn't it? I think on looking at the working group, but I'm sure we need to keep that conversation going about member involvement with that. Do I have members' agreement that this can go to Cabinet now? Yeah, I got Maureen, I've got myself, I've got Ruth, I got Louise. Anybody else on there? I just do with one more really. That's 4 of us.
Malcolm.
Malcolm, sorry Malcolm, that's 5 then, we're fine. If there's any more questions, speak out now. If not, we agree recommendations 2.1 and 2.2. Cheers, Ian. Thank you, team, and have a good day. All right, Ian. Before we continue, could I just ask you when we're going to bring the Gypsy Travellers workshop back on board? Is it due in the near future?
Yeah, we're looking at it as we speak, and yeah, we'll be looking to pencil that in. I'd suggest probably after Christmas now. But it was trying to create a structure for making a decision, and obviously the importance of that being transparent essentially.
So we're talking early New Year then, yeah?
I would suspect so at the moment. I can obviously I'll liaise with Hazel along that anyway. So
right, thank you.
Yeah, but we're actively working on it anyway.
All right, thank you, Ian. Thank you, Amy, and thank you, Stephen. Have a good day. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
Bye.
Right, members, we'll just go into the other items on the agenda. So we had a quick chat about the, let me just put my agenda up here, sorry. How many members do I have on board now? I know Martin had to leave. I got Ruth, Louise, Malcolm, Maureen. Right. Okay, let's just go into the other agenda items. Anybody want to speak on the other items there? We got the planner. Anything on the planner? Hazel?
Yeah, Chair, can I just raise 2 matters that I've briefly discussed with you, which is that we don't hold the December meeting, which appears to be an additional diaried meeting. And also that we move the January dates back slightly to allow us to undertake budget scrutiny during the consultation phase.
Yep, I'm fine with that. Everybody else is fine with that. Anybody not? Could you just please ask, or if there's anything you want to ask on that, or okay, Louise.
Yeah, I just wondered, in putting it back, have we got a different date suggested then?
For the budget?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have.
Hazel,
you explain, yeah.
Yeah, I don't, Chair. I only heard yesterday about what those dates would be. So I know that your diary dates will be too early. The reports won't be available. So I'd just like the committee's permission really to move that and do that the earliest opportunity rather than wait till next year to move it, Chair.
So, Chair, does that mean the meeting on the 11th of January is not going ahead then?
Yes,
No.
that's what it means. We would defer that meeting back a couple of weeks until we have the papers.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm slightly confused myself now. Our December meeting, we're not gonna hold, correct? Yes.
Yeah, you're not going to hold that, Chair, because it was an additional meeting that didn't need to be in the diary. But then the January meeting, we will push the date back by 2 weeks. But whilst I'm here, Chair, I'd like to draw members' attention to the 14th of December in the afternoon, when there's a special Economy and Development Select Committee, which will be meeting to look at the LDP and in particular affordable housing. So I think that's going to be of interest to all members. So just to highlight that to members of this committee, that is a relevant meeting. That's 2 p.m. on the afternoon of the 14th of December. So it is probably better that your meeting isn't going ahead in the morning. It allows members a bit more flexibility in their day.
Yeah, that's great. That's right. So did everybody get that? Our meeting as adult select will not be going ahead in December, but in the afternoon of our meeting date, there is a Economy and Development to discuss the LDP, and it will be within our interest to be on board with that meeting. Everybody got that? And then the meeting in January, which is the budget meeting, and that's going to be shoved back slightly, just as reference to the finance team, etc. Everybody got that? Hazel, could you just bounce an email out to, let's say, people who aren't on board today? We've got three absentees and Martin's gone as well, so that's 4. Just bounce an email out, just explain to them, and then they're well aware of it then, instead of last minute things. Is that all right?
Yes, no problem, Chair.
Yeah, okay. And then we have the cabinet planner. I just noticed on the cabinet planner there that they've left something on the top part of it, which should be taken off on the planner itself. You just ask Democratic Services to remove that one item off there, which is quite confusing, really, because it's showing it out of date there. I think it's already gone.
Will do.
Yeah. And then we've sorted out the meeting time. I think that's it. Nothing else. Any other business? Anybody? Raise your hand. No. Thank you, Val. Are you still on board, Val?
I'm still here with you, dear. Yes, it's
Well
been very
done.
interesting. And I tell you what, Chairman, the years I've been around, the various buildings that have been referenced, I mean, I can recall all of these and the various things. It's quite interesting. I think the big bogey, though, with getting properties that are in good condition that just sit idle is getting over the bogey that people have, that if you have a tenant in there, it will be trashed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that people have the confidence to actually think the council can manage it competently. But no, thank you very much indeed, Simon.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Have a good
Val.
day, folks.
Yeah, take care. Ruth,
Thanks,
did you
Val.
want to speak? Oh, you got. So we're all going to depart. Can I just have a quick word, Hazel, reference to before we shoot off, and I'll let members. Yeah, take care, everyone. See you soon.
Chair.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
hang on a minute. I got Hazel. Just want to jump in. Yeah.
I'm not sure that you actually approved the minutes.
All right. Okay. I didn't see that on mine there. Yeah, we approved them. Who've I got on board? I got Louise and Ruth there. Are we happy with the minutes? Yes.
I don't believe I was at the last meeting, Chair, so
Okay,
I'm.
I'll approve them.
Yeah,
Louise?
I was.
Oh, Maureen, well done, Maureen. There you go. We got Maureen. That's fine, no problem. Right, are we okay, everyone? Are we okay to go now, Hazel? That's the problem with me running 2 screens here. Right, okay.
No problem.
I just speak to you and Rob before we go, just for 2 minutes, just have an update of where we are with the meeting, etc. Wish you a good day, everyone. Stay safe and look after yourselves.
Thank you, Chair. Good meeting. Thank you.